Well, hi there. Just want to kind of wrap things up with our project on what we call a snapshot of your career. And if you take a look at the top, what we've done so far is we've downloaded a kind of a template that kind of guides you through the filling out the rest of the questions that we wanted you to fill out, such as what your three strongest areas are for your personal globe inventory and your three occupations. Notice that I have those in bold, and hopefully now you'll have a chance to go back and put some emphasis on some of those areas, like perhaps making them bold or kind of spreading them out. I'm going to show you some of those techniques right now, because in the very end I would like to see some coordination between your word art that we put in, the graphic that you put in, as well as down at the bottom we'll be putting in either a picture of your, I call it a graph, they call it a chart, or the chart itself, and I'll show you the difference, or I'll remind you of the difference in a minute. So here we go. So I've finished all my writing. I've made sure that my paragraphs are complete. I got rid of all the lines. There's no more just plain lines at all. And now I'm going to go back to my Excel sheet and make sure that that's finished and bring in the graph. Okay, so here we go. Going back to Excel. I have my page blown up a little bit, so I'll make it back to 100%, so it looks probably a little bit closer to yours. Now remember, this is still, I call this a living document, because if I still want to change something like the color, it still will change. If I want to change the font that's used for the graph, excuse me, I can do that up here. And notice when the whole graph is has a frame around it, it will change the writing for the whole thing. So I'll change this to Caslon Pro, and you'll notice that it changed slightly, but it changed. Just want to double check here. I'm not sure why this is red. I probably did that in the past sometime, and so don't worry about that being red. But make sure you have these things on your graph, and if you don't, maybe go back and look at the directions I have attached in Schoology. Make sure that you have a label over here, US dollars. Make sure that you have a title, take-home salary. Make sure that you've gotten rid of the legend over here. And then finally, make sure that we can read your words down here. The reason I say this is living is because if you'll notice, computer network coordinator is on 2 lines, as well as cardiopulmonary specialist. If I stretch this out though, you'll notice that some of those go to 1 line because it's living and it will readjust itself. If I grab it and pull it and make it taller, you may notice that the increments change over here, and that's the spreadsheet's way of allowing those changes to happen, in case you want to break it down. And then finally, the last thing that I'm looking for is that you have your values here. And again, that's all explained in the direction sheet I attached early in the week. Otherwise, you'll find a lot of those from right over here from your toolbox. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit more shading in the background. So I'm going to close up some of these tabs so that I can get to see down here. And I know some people have been looking at the gradient effect. Some of these. Now this might, because I have blue column graphs as well as a blue background, that might be a little bit hard to read, and so I'm going to go with maybe green. Now with that color green, perhaps I might want to change the color of my font to a darker color, and that would be up here, maybe black. That allows that to come through a little bit better. Now I could simply click on this, click and hold, and say I want to copy this. I may have to do a right click. Yep. So I could copy it by doing a right click or going up to edit copy. And I could go back to my Word document and simply paste it in. I'll go to the bottom, put my cursor at the bottom, and Command V for paste, and you'll notice it's probably going to end up on the second page. Should be coming, and there it is. It is still living, and it still has the same toolbox, even though now it's in Word. It still has the same toolbox that you would have if you were working in the spreadsheet version or in Excel. You can still make changes. If I want to make it gray instead of blue, I can do that. I'm going to undo that because I kind of like it the way it is. If you make it wider, it still will respond, and it will get wider. Of course, but you may say, well, I need to fit this on 1 page, and so I need to make it smaller. This would be the unfortunate thing of a living document. It ends up on 1 page, but also ends up making the information on your chart very illegible or unreadable. So we're not going to do that. We're going to go back. I'm going to edit undo. And so here is an option, and a viable option is saving it as a picture. And again, my directions lead you to this, but I want to show you too. So if I hold, if I do a right click, let's try it again. Right click, there we go. There is the Save as Picture option. And so I'm going to save it as a picture. I'm going to make sure I put it to my desktop, slide down, add it to my desktop, and save. And I'm not going to call it anything because I just need it temporarily. And now I'm going to actually delete this in Handles, make sure it's back in Handles, and then hit Delete. Now I'm going to insert it. There's a couple ways I can do that. I can say Insert a graphic picture from a file because I need to find it somewhere. And my Finder window will pop up. Go to my desktop, and because I have date modified, the last thing I did comes right to the top. Okay, and now I simply have to hit the Insert button. Now you might say, well, what's the difference? It's still there. The difference is it's now a graphic, and I have the toolbox responds to a graphic, and I can match up any type of a frame I may have used in a different part of the project. I also, if I now need to make it smaller, you'll notice that it does not crumple it like it did before when it was still a living document. So now I can make it smaller. You're going to want to do the text wrap because some of you are going to want to spread this out, and so you'll want to double click in here. You'll want to go to Layout, and you'll want to do either square or tight for this particular project. Now when you move it or make it bigger, the text will wrap around it, and you can basically maximize it to fit it on your page. And that's what I'm looking for. Here's what I'm looking for, and here's where you're going to have a chance to explore today. I'm going to make my window a little bit smaller so that I can see my toolbox when I open it up, and it won't interfere. Okay, so here's what I want you to coordinate. I want you to consider your word art and the colors of your word art, and I want you to consider trying to match them with some colors in either the graphic or your graph down at the bottom. I'm not a fan of this picture, so I'm going to bring in another one. So I'm going to delete that. I've already taken another picture in Photo Booth and put it on my desktop, so I'm going to open up my Finder, and I'm going to go to my desktop and drag and drop it in. It's let's see, I believe it is. I thought I did that. I think it's right here. And I think it's not coming to the top because I think I've saved it before on my desktop. Now again, some of you may have experienced this. This is kind of crazy. Remember, a graphic you have to double click on and then look for the word format. I'm glad this happened because it doesn't always happen the first time. Let's try it again. I think I may have moved my mouse as I double clicked. Double click again without moving it. There's the word layout. Now we can do square or tight. Notice the whole picture will come in. Now I can grab a corner, not a middle, but a corner, and I can reposition it because it's now free floating. It's no longer locked in line. If I haven't already told you to put a place in the top left-hand corner to make it look like that's where I'm going to staple, here's what I'd like you to do. Go to your object palette, which is in your toolbox. Choose the one that looks like a line, and make a little line where a typical staple would be. Because I want you to, because I will be stapling it right there with your other information, and I want you to respect that and not put either your word art or your picture over that. Okay, so now I have maybe a little bit better picture, maybe a little bit more appropriate picture for this project. I want it to be a serious picture, and so now remember, every time you click on something different, your toolbox is going to change. So now, if I wanted to change the fill color, maybe make it a little bit brown. In fact, they may have gotten this from Photoshop. Let's go to fill color, and they give you that same eyedropper technique. And so if I wanted to match it with the brown of the background of my picture, I could do that. And so now that you have some color coordination between your picture and your word art. Okay. Now, if this ever happens with your word art, the way you can avoid that is coming over here, either adjusting the height of your word art or adjusting and hitting some returns with your paragraph, so you give yourself a little bit more room. I will give you the, if you want, since there's a lot of white space right here that you might be able to take advantage of, adjust your, by deleting the returns that I've put in the template. So if you wanted to adjust that because you want to fit it on one page, please do that. You'll also notice when your cursor is in the writing, if you go to document margin, I've already changed mine. You can see that my writing is closer to the outside edge because I've changed the margins and made them only a half an inch, left and right, and 3/4 of an inch for top and bottom. Let's go back down here to my the graph again. Now you'll notice that because I saved this as a picture, I can still I can do a frame around it, and I can match that frame. If I go in here and look at the weight of that line, I can change the weight of that line so it's not so thick. And if I wanted to, I can now match, and I could say, well, let me get a frame for this picture, and let me get a matching frame for this picture as well. So there it is. I'll have to go back again to the weight and say I want a lighter weight frame, and now my frames match. And so I would like you notice as I did that, this may have adjusted, so I'm going to have to hit a return. And there we go. One return is enough. I would like you to coordinate again, and you'll be explaining this to me when you hand it in a paragraph. You'll explain to me how you matched your word art to your graphic selfie to your graph itself, and yet still keep everything on one page. So there are some advantages to doing some of the things that I've been asking you to do. I do want you to change your font. I do not want you to use the default one, which is Calibri, I believe. I want you to change. You have many to change too. Obviously, some are very inappropriate because they're just symbols. Some are too fancy. Some are too thick. But you have a lot to choose from. There's a lot of appropriate ones. You don't want to choose some that are all capitalized. You don't want to choose the cracked one. That's not appropriate for a whole paragraph type thing. So make a good decision. Change your font to something that's acceptable. Giddy up might look fancy if you're doing an advertisement for a horse, a rodeo or something, but it's not appropriate for this particular project. So always keep that in mind, okay? And again, I want you to have everything fit on one page. We'll talk about strategies in class, but that is a goal of yours. So thanks for listening, and I hope to see some wonderful projects, and good luck with your finishing off of this project.